I think that it would be interesting to say some words about the role of artificial intelligence in the economy and at the universities. And one of the reasons for that is that University of Warsaw, everyone was making some kind of presentation, so I will try also to say some words, is the second best in terms of artificial intelligence of development in Europe. Tech Union Israeli University is number one, and we are ranked, if the rankings are right, we are ranked number 2. And in the world, around 12, 13 positions. So it's not bad. When you look at the people like Altman or Musk, whom they are hired, so among 10 people, they hire 5 or 6 sometimes graduated from the University of Warsaw. So this gives me the rights to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. However, we fully not use artificial intelligence at the University of Warsaw. It's very difficult to implement all the not problems, but the solutions which are being prepared at the Department of Mathematics and in particular by young generation. But one of the questions which we are asking usually is whether artificial intelligence can replace human being. And there is no one answer. Some people say yes, and some people say not. I am of the opinion that in the short run, artificial intelligence is not able to replace both human being and also the universities. So there is still place for the universities. Probably universities need some changes, some reforms, and we have been trying to implement the reforms and the changes just to adjust to the changing situation, European and world situation. But what is going to the human being, one of the reasons I think that artificial intelligence is not able to replace human being is that up to now, artificial intelligence has no dreams, has no feeling, and cannot manage or cannot communicate directly with the human beings. And if you want to be a researcher, if you are a researcher, you have to have the dreams, you have to be consequent in getting the goals and fulfilling the dreams, and you have to have one more important characteristic. If you are not successful, you have to get up and you have to repeat research, you have to repeat the exams, and you have to repeat other things. The artificial intelligence cannot do that. However, to some extent, artificial intelligence can replace certain professionals and professional work. For example, in analyzing the statistical data, in banking system, in insurance companies, but also in the medicine. So it can be very useful. Yesterday it was presented. It can be very useful because it accelerated the analysis. It has been not creating the analysis, but has accelerated the analysis. On the other side, people, human beings, are still needed, number one, because they can or should control artificial intelligence, they should supervise artificial intelligence, and also for that reason, some state, some government is needed. Sometimes governments or states are very criticized that they are only consuming time and money, and they are not needed for the development of the economy. And just the state, the governments can be used as a regulator and take care of the human beings. So in the long run, there is no reason for reducing employment. In Europe, generally speaking, we have been observing also another thing. As you know, within the European Union, we have been observing depopulation. So the number of workers, the number of population is decreasing. So artificial intelligence, in particular, digitalization, robotization, automatization, etc., can help to replace workers. And there is another reason for positive assessment of artificial intelligence. In Europe, for the last 45, maybe 50 even years, we had been running a huge discussion to answer the question, how long should the people work during the weekdays? There are countries, and there are certain places, namely Benelux countries, but also Germany, France, and to some extent Scandinavian countries, Israel as well. There are many economists who say that it would be enough, also in order to protect climate, to reduce consumption, to work only 3 days of 5 days of the week. So if there is such case, artificial intelligence can be also helpful. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. This is another question. A lot of philosophers and economists afraid of such situation. But having experiences of COVID, when people were not together, when they were atomized, when they stayed at home, and they used properly their time, also free time, it can happen also, and some businesses, namely the big companies, concerns, automotive industry, they reduced the workload for many workers. So maybe it will be the case that can happen. Can artificial intelligence change the structure of employment? Yes, probably it can. But historically, we experienced such situation. 100 years ago, there were many, or even 80 years ago, there were very many people employed in agriculture sectors. Once the machinery, the effectiveness of agriculture sector increased, many people left the villages and went to the towns. And in result of having assets in terms of human beings, the infrastructure was improved, and also production and the increased as well. Industry increased very much. And then after 30, 35 years, automatization came, digitalization came. So the workers were frankly free. Some of workers were on leave, we can say. So the services have been developed. People moved to the services. Less people within industry, but more people in services. So maybe just now will be also exactly the same case because of artificial intelligence. So we cannot be against, we cannot be in favor. This is an objective process of development of artificial intelligence. So we have to adjust to the situation, and we should do everything to use the possibility of making life easier. So the next question is, who is going to enjoy artificial intelligence at first? On average, everyone? Probably not. Artificial intelligence requires also certain conditions. What are the conditions to implement artificial intelligence? Number one, you have to be rich, you have to have money for implementation of artificial intelligence, buying equipment, which is not such cheap nowadays. And additionally, you have to have also human capital. You have to have educated people. And not all the people all over the world are equally educated. Even within the countries, there are people in some regions better educated, and in some regions, in some industries, less educated. So probably the best solution or the most profitable will be the big businesses. The businesses which have both money, finances, and human assets. So again, it will be, or there is still some place for the state, for government. Number one, to spend money on education or to increase spending on education, to build infrastructure, etc., etc. Look what happened in the recent years, or last year. President Trump invested almost 500 million of US dollars in infrastructure to build the artificial intelligence. Mostly this was private money from the big companies. They gave him money to make stronger connections, but it was invest. Within European Union, we invest only 15 billions. He invested 500 billions, and we invest only 15 billions of euros in infrastructure. So the disparity is huge. So this means that the understanding of the money needed to develop also the artificial intelligence is not equally understood. The countries differ and the regions differ. But anyway, I am generally speaking optimistic of having artificial intelligence also for one more reason. Recently, I was giving a lecture in Beijing. I only know few sentences in Mandarin, Gambei, Niha, Sheshe, and some more. And we could communicate. I was giving a lecture in English, but once the students and professors came to me, we were using the instruments. They were writing in Chinese. On Mandarin, I was writing in Polish. And we could communicate between the cultures, between the different people who are speaking different languages. So it is huge advantage, except other advantages. Yesterday, many good people were talking about that, accelerating the research, accelerating teaching, enabling teaching online. We can be here in Dubai and people in Poland or in America or whatever in African country can see us, listening us, talk to us, and when we can communicate. So the last sentence would be that artificial intelligence is not solving all the problems. Education, intelligence, and wise is needed and probably will be needed forever. But as a tool, can be very helpful and can help us to have a better life. I know about the fake news, I know about the disinformation, etc. But if you are wise enough, if you are educated, you can use your brain and reject all those things and use only the positive signs and characteristics of artificial intelligence. Thank you. Time is over. Thank you very much.
The role of mathematics in AI. So AI now is a word that we hear all the time. And it is extremely successful. It has been extremely successful. Still, there are many things we want to understand, we want perhaps to improve. And mathematics plays an important role. So I will try to kind of give an overview of what where AI plays a role in, where mathematics plays a role in AI, and perhaps some things we can still do, especially if we think about applications to modern society. So I have this roadmap for my talk. So essentially, I would like first to give you a sense of some areas in AI where mathematics, let's say, influence a lot. What are the key tools? Then one of the key issues in AI is robustness. So you want systems that are robust under uncertainty because the world is uncertain. The world changes. The conditions change all the time. And you want models that kind of can be robust under disruption. And one, as I will mention at the end, one natural application, for instance, will be towards, for instance, supply chain. So let me first start with the role of math in AI. So math in AI is really fundamental. I would say there are three major areas of mathematics that naturally show up in AI. So the first thing is probability. Probability because essentially you have data, a lot of data, and you need probability to model this data, and to give this gives you like a sort of distribution. It gives you a sense of how data are distributed when you study data that can be images or whatever you are trying to model. So you have the first step is usually through probability, where you try to encode data. Then there is a second step, which is about the making decisions. You want to use your model to make decisions, and there optimization enters. So you want your model to reproduce reality, and so you have this huge amount of data that you kind of collected, you model them through probability first, and then you optimize your system, your AI system, to kind of give you faithful outputs. This could be, for instance, when you try to generate new images. You want so you optimize your model in such a way that the image that it generates are very faithful. They kind of reproduce reality. And then there is a third step, a third tool, mathematical tool, which is geometry. So geometry is what? I have perhaps my fake world, the one that I create through my AI model, and then I have the real world, and I want the real and the fake world to be as close as possible so that the model is, as I said, faithful. And I can use kind of geometry to measure the distance between the real world and the fake world and make sure that they are very close so that what we are doing works well. So these are so probability, optimization, and geometry are kind of three mathematical tools that naturally appear when we work on AI. Let me give an example. So AI is a broad word, and within AI there are many kind of tools and many kind of problems. One classic example is generative AI, which is about generating new content. So generative AI is what creates new tests, is what creates images. We are used now to many, many tools that do that. And essentially what you do, again, as explained before, you have you use probability first. You have kind of distribution over data. And then you need to, by looking at this distribution of huge data, you try to generate new text, for instance. And the optimization is what runs everything. So generative AI is, for instance, as I said, when you just use it to create new text, you just write a prompt, you say, please give me a text that does so and so, and then it comes out. What the model has done is that it has seen a lot of examples, and then, so that's the probability part, and then the optimization part is to kind of combine them in a way that what it generates makes sense. Another way to generate within generative AI, a tool that has been extremely successful now has been the one of these fusion models, which are models where things go backward with respect to what we are used to. So we're used that usually if I have something very clean and then I add some noise, so I perturb the image, then the image gets blurry and I lose information. And essentially what these models do in AI is that they reverse the process. So they start from something completely blurry, like the first image, which looks like total noise, you have no information, and they're able to revert it so to create images. This is what many image generation models do. And the math part is essentially to invert this noise. So you learn how to make the noise, and then you learn then from that how to denoise. So essentially, yeah, the intuition is like you learn how to walk back from randomness to structure. So this is a big success of AI that we use, that we as users mostly use LightGeo, just ask, please give me an image that does so and so. And for instance, several of the images that you see in my slides are just done in that way. I just wrote a prompt, say I want an image that represents this, and that's how I got images for my slides. So now so AI, we know how it works, but perhaps something that you really like in many situations, some AI which is robust. So why do we want that? So sometimes there are situations where there is lack of data. So, it depends what you want to do, but very often data may not be many. So that's a big issue. Then you can think of the world changes, so this distribution shift. So I will use later supply chain as my example, but that's a very simple example. So just think that you want to use AI, for instance, to optimize just supply chain distribution. Just think of the post services. Data are very limited. Periods change, so distribution of supply or post or whatever changes during periods of the year is not the same. For instance, Black Friday is very different from summer. And the system can be fragile, because if you have an international situation where transports occurs through many countries, then geopolitical conditions, for instance, can influence how transportation can be done, because perhaps you have some new tariffs to pay or whatever can influence the market. So the market can be fragile. And so having something that is robust, it's something that you can rely on even when disruption happens. So based on that, there is a tool that naturally, mathematical tool on which I've been working on for many years, that kind of naturally seems to appear in these kind of questions. And this is called optimal transport. So optimal transport dates back to Gaspard Monge. We are back in the 18th century. So Gaspard Monge was a mathematician who worked essentially during the French Revolution. And he was interested in finding the optimal way of transporting resources from a place to another. So the reason was purely immediate application. So this was during the period of the Napoleonic campaign, just before. So the idea was that you want to build fortifications, and you want to transport material from one place to another in the cheapest possible way. So this was the starting point for Monge. He developed the mathematical theory, then many more contributions followed him. There have been works, for instance, by Kantorovich, who got the Nobel Prize in economics for his work on optimal transport. And the optimal transport question is how expensive is to take some distribution and move it to a different distribution. So essentially, so in the classical Monge formulation, the cost that you use to measure is just a product of the distance times the mass moved. So the more mass you have to move, the more it costs, and especially the more distance it travels, the more you pay. And so you can imagine that if the cost is small, it means that the two objects are close. So optimal transport can measure closeness between objects, and so in a sense it can tell you how much two objects are close to each other, which is particularly relevant if you think about my first point, this geometry point of measuring how much the real world and the artificial world that we created through some AI model are close to each other. So, so this is exactly the kind of application we have in mind. Is optimal transport has been a tool that we as mathematicians use for many years now, but perhaps we could think of this as a tool that could go beyond just pure mathematics. In particular, you have the data, the trained data that are the one that you generate through your model. There is the real world, and you can ask yourself how expensive it is for me to transport the trained data and the real data to each other, one from the other. So the smaller the cost, the more faithful is my model. So this is the first kind of idea you can have. So use optimal transport as a measuring closeness to the real world, but that's not just it. So the key point is the following. So you want to, in AI, you need a system that works for you, and a tool that is been very successful is reinforcement learning. So you have, in the reinforcement learning, you have an agent, the dog, that acts with the environment. So essentially there are actions and rewards that you get, and essentially the agent learns by this action reward system. And the goal is that you want to maximize the long-term return. So it's not just getting, a bit of food from the owner of the dog just because he acts well, but in some sense you want, in the end, the dog to be well trained. So it's a long-term return. And this reinforcement learning, so we go to the agent now. So the real world, in the real world, in the AI world, the dog becomes a neural network, and then you have these simulations, and there are this action reward system. But reinforcement learning is a tool that has been extremely successful in closed systems. For instance, you can use reinforcement learning to train your neural network to play chess or Go or games in general, because the rules are well known. They don't change. There is no disruption in chess. You know the rules of the game. But the world is not like this. The world is not just made of rules that are stable and steady. They change. And so there is a mismatch between the simulation and the reality. And the idea is that instead of training your models towards just few situations, you can kind of enlarge the space and say, okay, I don't have one word, I have many words, because word can change given the conditions, and I'm gonna train using all of them at the same time. So the model kind of learns from many different words. Optimal transport tells you how much a word is, can be real or not, so you don't want words that are totally absurd. But you kind of have a variety of words that you can use to train your system. So it's a combination of reinforcement learning and optimal transport that it's an idea for for creating a robust AI systems. And so the idea is that you have on the left, you have all the simulation ensembles, so many plausible words, depending on different conditions. From there, you train your reinforcement learning system, use your reinforcement learning to train across several plausible words. And then you use this to make decisions, and then you can calibrate given the outcome. So it's kind of either force, right? You use your system, you see how it acts, you see how effective it is, and perhaps you update and recalibrate the system to make it more and more robust and efficient. So that's in a sense what the idea is for robust AI that we have. So the supply chain will be the natural test bed for these kind of ideas. So the point in the supply chain is that many decisions are still made by humans, and because of lack of data, it's extremely complicated just to, say, deploy a standard AI system. And also data change and are updated and depends on many parameters. And also small decisions can have very big effects. So there is this is a natural situation where robust AI could make a difference. And so just to conclude and summarize, I would say the take-home message from this short presentation is that AI is very powerful, but is not in general robust. So optimal transport is an important mathematical tool that structure robustness, and a natural test bed could be supply chain. And actually, this is something that we are doing currently in Zurich with the support of SNF, the Swiss National Foundation. And that's everything I wanted to say. So I thank you for your attention.